Okay, so let's look at coral reefs. So what leads to bleaching is this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and then goes into the ocean, where it then lowers the pH, which increases acidity, and then it kills off the algae that grows on the coral. Coral is a fine balance between this polyp, which is cnidarian, and this algae. The algae provides additional energy to the coral that can't live without it, and then it dies. Uh, Other things could be, increase in temperature and increase in other pollution, basically runoff. So nutrients, nitrates, phosphates from farms can get in the water and then cause it to get cloudy, and then these algae cannot get the sunlight they need. So the relationship, um, if you have, uh, which I just kind of explained, but increasing that carbon dioxide is going to increase the Earth's average temperature, average temperature, and that can warm the water, increase water temp. That can then kill coral, and that CO2 can lead to lower pH, increases acidity. And what you can do to help coral, use less fossil fuels. So that means less less driving of any kind of vehicle or riding anything, and less, electronics. So just using less electricity in general. Here we have a nice little diagram that shows you these algae that grow on the coral, and the polyps live in between them, and they deposit this calcium layer over time. They get calcium from the water, and then they build up these large structures. And eventually, when the algae dies, it just looks white because there's no color from the chlorophyll. So you see here a change so increasing the temperature, runoff, and pollution, like we mentioned, or I mentioned. Too much sunlight from this low tide also, part of coral bleaching. And here's some more information. Again, warming ocean, sea level rise, increasing sedimentation, and that can block the sunlight from getting to the coral. Storm patterns, that disrupts the development. You got more hurricanes. And just in general, changing Earth's temperature um, can affect currents. So its coral are used to some certain currents that move nutrients around, provide them the basics that they need, and those currents change, that can affect them. Change in precipitation. So these big rainfalls leads to more runoff, and therefore more junk in the water. These are kind of going together. The storm patterns can affect those currents. And then I talked about pH before in that last slide. So human activities and climate change. This is something that denialists use. I took this from a denialist website. They say, look, there's been no global warming, and they very particular want you to look from 98 to 2014. If you actually do a proper graph on here, you will see some increase, just not a whole lot. This is an area, this was a time period where we had such a big rise earlier, it kind of leveled out, and then it rose up after this, it could level out in the future, and that's usually how things go. But the trend overall is increasing. They chose this leveling out year, but it actually did still increase. And then we see here from, you always want to look at your sources, National Oceanic Atmospheric Association. I'll look at that, what that is. But we see the overall trend is clear. We have global warming is increasing. So there's some myths you can look at. If you go to Skeptical Science, I wonder if I can get to that using this program. I don't think so. So one of the myths is it's okay, so it's not a problem. We can adapt. And the issue with this is that this change is so fast in the temperature, it's too fast for us to change in time. So how do I word this? Living things cannot adapt this quickly, and that leads to extinctions. So in order to adapt, you need usually more time to build up the mutations that allow any given species to survive when conditions change. Another myth they use, they like to say that this is normal, that climate always changes. And that is true. However, the fact check, I like that, I'm going to use that. We fact check, change takes a long time. So thousands of years. So a long time, thousands of years. The changes that we're doing are sped up quite quickly, and that's the whole fear, that organisms aren't going to be able to change in time to adapt. So on the one hand, it is true climate changes over time. It's not true because it's misinformation that normally organisms have a long time to adapt to those changes. Anytime, and there's been 6 mass extinctions in the period of the Earth, since life has been around, about 3 billion years, and every time, the reason why you have a mass extinction is you have rapid change, like what we're experiencing now. So that rapid change leads to extinctions, and I would say we don't want to be going extinct. So this is a classic graph, Mount Aloha starting in 1958, and then this drops us off around, it looks like 2008, and you see just that rise in carbon dioxide following this annual cycle that we talked about. At this period of the year, CO2 is going up because plants aren't fully going in the northern hemisphere. Then the plants kick in the summer months, spring and summer, and drive down global CO2 levels because the northern hemisphere is so dominant with its plants. Remember, more plants in the northern hemisphere. So, and then in the wintertime, those plants start to shut down, more CO2 builds up. And down in Tasmania, they set up another facility in '88 where they were also, it's good to have not just, whenever you're doing something significant, especially not just one collection point of your data, but 2. So, several thousand miles away. I'm not sure how far away Tasmania is from Mount Aloha, but I would guess it's 4 to 6,000 miles, but I could be a little bit off on that. But you see the same thing, increase in carbon dioxide levels, still following that seasonal fluctuation. And here's a cool picture of Mount Aloha. Um, you'll see it's a very smooth top volcano, like shield volcanoes are, and this is where they're measuring that CO2 level.